As Clara's business flourished, so did her relationship with Jason. Their love grew stronger, built on trust, resilience, and shared dreams. Her cafe had become a popular spot in town, not just for the delicious food, but for the warmth and generosity she showed to everyone. People admired how she helped those in need, and her business was thriving. One afternoon, Clara was behind the counter, chatting with a few regular customers when the cafe's door swung open. A woman walked in, and the entire atmosphere shifted. She was tall, curvy, and strikingly beautiful, with deep brown skin that glowed like honey, sharp cheekbones, and full lips painted a bold red. Her hair was styled into perfect waves, cascading down her back. She wore a fitted white dress, hugging her curves in all the right places, and designer heels that clicked against the wooden floor with every step. Her expensive perfume lingered in the air, and her jewelry, gold bracelets and diamond earrings, caught the light as she gracefully approached the counter. Clara, still wiping her hands on a towel, looked up to greet her. Before she could speak, the woman let out a low scoff, folding her arms. "So you're Jason's wife?" Her tone dripped with disbelief and condescension as she looked Clara up and down, her perfectly arched brows lifting as if she were unimpressed. A few customers sitting nearby paused, sensing the tension. Clara kept her expression calm, though her heart quickened. "Yes," she replied smoothly, meeting the woman's gaze without flinching. "And you are?" The woman smirked, tilting her head slightly. "Sasha Monroe." She let the name hang in the air like it meant something. Then, after a deliberate pause, she added, "Jason's ex-fiancée." The words hit Clara like a punch to the stomach. A few gasps came from the customers who had overheard. Clara's grip on the counter tightened for a second, but she quickly composed herself. She wasn't about to let this woman see her rattled. "Jason never mentioned you," Clara said evenly, keeping her voice light but firm. Sasha chuckled, placing a manicured hand on the counter as she leaned in slightly. "Oh, darling, that's because men like Jason don't talk about the things they regret." Clara's stomach twisted, but she refused to let her emotions show. Instead, she tilted her head and smiled slightly. "If he regretted me, he wouldn't have married me." Sasha's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but she recovered quickly. "We'll see about that," she murmured before standing upright, adjusting her dress. She reached into her designer purse, pulled out a business card, and slid it across the counter toward Clara. "Tell your husband I'm back in town," she said with a smirk. "And that I'd love to catch up." Then, with the same confident stride she had walked in with, she turned and exited the cafe, leaving behind an air of mystery and the unmistakable scent of trouble. Clara stood there, staring at the business card on the counter, her heart pounding. For the first time since marrying Jason, she felt uncertain. Clara stared at the business card on the counter for a moment, then let out a slow exhale. She wasn't about to let this woman rattle her. She knew her place in Jason's life. Lifting her gaze, she called out just before Sasha reached the door, her voice calm but sharp. "Good. I like how you said that, ex-fiancé." Sasha froze mid-step. Clara folded her arms, her confidence unwavering. "That means you're his past, and I'm his future." A few customers nearby murmured in approval, impressed by Clara's composure. Sasha slowly turned around, her eyes narrowing slightly, but her smirk remained. "We'll see how long that lasts." Clara smiled, but there was steel behind it. "Oh, I'm not worried. Jason chose me, after all." Sasha held Clara's gaze for a moment, as if sizing her up. Then, with a flourish of her long manicured nails, she turned and walked out of the cafe, her designer heels clicking against the pavement. As the door swung shut behind her, Clara let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Who was that?" one of the customers asked. Clara picked up the business card, flipped it once in her hand, then casually tossed it into the trash. "No one important," she said, turning back to her work. Later that day, Jason sat in his sleek office, reviewing some business reports when the door swung open without warning. He looked up, his expression shifting from calm to tense the moment he saw who it was. Sasha. She stood in the doorway, her posture confident, her fitted designer dress hugging her curves. A smug smile played on her lips, as if she had expected this exact reaction. Jason frowned deeply, placing his pen down. "Sasha," he said, his voice firm. "Why are you here?" She took a slow step inside, her expensive perfume lingering in the air, before closing the door behind her. What? She teased, tilting her head slightly. No warm welcome for an old friend? Jason leaned back in his chair, his jaw tightening. We're not friends. Sasha chuckled, walking toward his desk with measured confidence. Ouch, she said, placing a manicured hand over her chest in mock hurt. And to think we almost got married. Jason's expression didn't change. But we didn't, he said flatly. And I'm married now. So again, why are you here? Sasha sat on the edge of his desk, crossing her long legs elegantly. Relax, Jay, she purred, using a nickname he hadn't heard in years. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just wanted to see you. To catch up. Jason's eyes darkened. You didn't want to catch up when you walked out on me before our wedding. Sasha's smirk faltered for just a moment, but she recovered quickly. That was a long time ago, she said lightly, and besides, people change. Jason leaned forward, his voice cold. Yeah? Well, I didn't. I don't play games anymore, Sasha. Sasha exhaled slowly, then smiled again, but this time it was different. Less playful, more calculating. I'm not playing games, Jason. Her voice softened, almost too sincere. I made a mistake back then, and I just wanted to see if there was any part of you that still thinks about me. Jason stood up suddenly, his towering presence making it clear he was done with this conversation. I don't, he said firmly. I have a wife now, a woman I love, a woman who doesn't see me as a status symbol, but as a man, and I won't disrespect her by entertaining whatever this is. Sasha stared at him, her face unreadable. Then, after a moment, she sighed and stood up, adjusting her dress. Well, I had to try, she said smoothly. But Jason, if I were you, I wouldn't be so sure of your wife's loyalty either. Jason's eyes narrowed dangerously. What are you talking about? Sasha smiled mischievously, stepping toward the door. Let's just say, people don't always love who they think they love. And with that, she walked out, leaving Jason with a storm brewing in his chest. That evening, Jason came home with a headache, his mind clouded with Sasha's cryptic words from earlier. As he loosened his tie and collapsed onto the couch, his thoughts wouldn't settle. He knew Sasha was manipulative, but the way she said those last words, it planted a seed of doubt he hated to acknowledge. People don't always love who they think they love. Jason clenched his jaw, rubbing his temples. Why did she say that? What game was she playing? Meanwhile, Clara was in the kitchen, humming softly as she stirred a pot on the stove. The scent of her cooking filled their home, creating an atmosphere of warmth and comfort. A direct contrast to the storm brewing inside Jason's mind. Moments later, she stepped into the living room, wiping her hands on a towel, her smile soft. But as soon as she saw Jason's tense expression, her brows furrowed. Are you okay? She asked gently, walking toward him. Jason exhaled slowly, forcing himself to shake off his thoughts. He looked up at her, the woman he had fought so hard for, the woman he trusted. Just a rough day at work, he said, his voice calmer than he felt. Clara studied him for a moment, sensing there was more he wasn't saying. She sat beside him, her fingers lightly brushing his arm. You sure? You look like something's bothering you. Jason hesitated, debating whether to tell her about Sasha's visit. Would bringing it up just cause unnecessary stress, or did she deserve to know? He sighed, looking into her eyes. Sasha came to see me today. Clara's expression stiffened slightly, but she didn't look shocked. She came to my cafe too, she admitted, crossing her arms. Tried to make me feel small, but I put her in her place. Jason couldn't help but smirk slightly at that. I bet you did. Clara tilted her head, watching him carefully. What did she want from you? Jason leaned forward, rubbing his hands together. She said she wanted to catch up, but I know Sasha. She doesn't do anything without a reason. Clara's eyes narrowed. And? Jason hesitated, then sighed. She said something strange before she left, that I shouldn't be so sure of your loyalty. Clara's body tensed. Excuse me? She said, her voice sharp. Jason held up a hand. I don't believe her, Clara. I know who you are. I don't know what she's trying to do, and that's what's getting to me. Clara let out a frustrated laugh, standing up. She's trying to get in your head, Jason. And apparently it's working. Jason frowned. I never said I believed her. But you let it bother you, Clara interrupted, placing her hands on her hips. Jason, I married you. I love you. And now, after all we've been through, you're letting your ex plant doubts in your mind? Jason sighed and stood up too, placing his hands on her shoulders. No, Clara, I trust you. I just don't trust Sasha. Clara's shoulders relaxed slightly, but the tension in her face remained. Then don't give her power over our marriage. Jason nodded slowly, knowing she was right. He pulled her into a hug, holding her close. You're right. I won't let her get to me. Clara softened in his arms, resting her head against his chest. Good, because if she wants to play games, she's going to lose. Jason chuckled, kissing her forehead. That's my wife. That night, as the city lights flickered outside their bedroom window, Jason and Clara held each other close, their love proving stronger than the doubts Sasha had tried to plant. Jason traced his fingers along Clara's smooth brown skin, his touch both gentle and possessive, as if to remind her, and himself, that she was his and he was hers. I love you, he murmured against her lips, his voice deep and filled with emotion. Clara smiled softly, cupping his face, her eyes locked onto his. Then show me. Jason didn't need to be told twice. He leaned in, kissing her deeply, passionately, as if he needed to erase every lingering shadow of doubt, every lingering trace of Sasha's words. Their clothes melted away as their hands explored familiar territory, their bodies molding together in a dance they had perfected over time. Clara gasped as Jason's lips trailed down her neck, his movements slow and deliberate, worshipping her, reminding her that no other woman, past, present, or future, could come between them. You're mine, Clara, he whispered against her skin. No one can change that. And you're mine, she responded breathlessly, pulling him closer. They made love slowly at first, savoring every touch, every kiss, as if they were rediscovering each other all over again. But soon, the passion intensified, their need for each other taking over completely. Moans filled the room as they moved together, their bodies in perfect sync, their connection deeper than just desire. It was love, trust, and devotion. As they reached their peak, Jason buried his face into Clara's neck, whispering her name like a prayer, holding her as if he never wanted to let go. And as they lay together afterward, bodies tangled, breath slowing, Clara traced circles on Jason's chest, feeling his heartbeat beneath her fingertips. Nothing can break us, she whispered. Jason kissed her forehead, pulling her even closer. Weeks had passed since Sasha's visit, and life had returned to normal, or so it seemed. Clara had been working hard at the cafe, pouring her heart and soul into the business. Jason was just as busy, balancing his growing empire while making sure he always made time for his wife. But something had changed. Clara wasn't feeling like herself. She had been feeling exhausted, her appetite fluctuating, and some mornings she felt a wave of nausea she couldn't explain. At first she ignored it, thinking it was just stress or fatigue. Then, one afternoon, while managing the cafe, her vision blurred. The voices of customers around her became distant, and before she could steady herself, she collapsed. The emergency call Mark, her assistant manager, rushed to her side. Clara? Clara, can you hear me? He asked, panic rising in his voice. She groaned softly, her body feeling weak. Without hesitation, Mark pulled out his phone and called Jason. The moment Jason answered, his heart dropped at Mark's urgent tone. Jason, you need to get here now. Clara collapsed. Jason's world stopped. I'm on my way, he said, grabbing his keys and rushing out of his office without a second thought. By the time Jason arrived at the cafe, Clara was barely conscious, and Mark had already called an ambulance. Jason didn't wait. He scooped her into his arms and carried her to his car, refusing to waste another second. Jason sat beside Clara in the hospital room, holding her hand tightly, his thumb stroking over her fingers as he prayed silently. When the doctor finally entered, Jason's heart pounded in his chest. What's wrong with her, Doc? He asked, trying to keep his voice calm. The doctor glanced at Clara, then smiled. She's perfectly fine. In fact, congratulations. Your wife is pregnant. The room fell silent. Clara's eyes widened as she sat up slightly. Wait, what? She whispered. Jason blinked, his mind trying to process the words. Pregnant? He repeated, his voice a mixture of shock and awe. The doctor nodded. Yes, that explains the fatigue, nausea, and dizziness. She's just a few weeks along, but everything looks good. Clara covered her mouth with her hand, tears welling in her eyes. Jason let out a choked laugh, then suddenly cupped her face, looking at her like she had just given him the greatest gift in the world. We're having a baby, he whispered, his voice filled with wonder and love. Clara nodded, laughing through her happy tears. Yes, Jason, we're having a baby. Jason pressed his forehead against hers, emotion overwhelming him. Then, unable to contain his joy, he kissed her deeply, holding her as if he never wanted to let go. The war with Sasha, the doubts, the challenges, none of it mattered now. Because this was their future. Days later, Sasha strutted into Jason's office once again, her confidence unwavering, despite knowing that he had already shut her down before. This time, though, she had one last card to play. Jason looked up from his desk, his expression instantly darkening when he saw her. "Sasha," he said, his voice cold and clipped. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is the last time you'll walk into my office uninvited." Sasha smirked, brushing invisible lint from her designer dress as she sauntered toward his desk. "Oh, come on, Jay," she purred, placing her hands on his desk. "We had something special once. Are you really going to act like none of it mattered?" Jason's jaw tightened. He leaned forward, his gaze unwavering, his tone deadly serious. "Listen carefully, Sasha. My wife is pregnant." Sasha's smirk faded for a split second, but Jason didn't stop. "I am not entertaining this nonsense anymore. Whatever sick game you're playing, it's over." He pressed a button on his desk phone. "Security, I need someone escorted out of my office immediately." Sasha's eyes flared, but before she could protest, 2 security guards entered. "Please escort Miss Monroe out," Jason ordered, standing up and adjusting his watch. "And make sure she understands, she is not to return." The guards moved toward Sasha, ready to remove her, but she suddenly lifted her hands in surrender, a small mischievous smile creeping onto her lips. "Fine, fine," she said, stepping back as if admitting defeat. She turned to leave, but not before throwing one last glance over her shoulder. "Congratulations, Jason," she said smoothly. "A baby is such a fragile thing." Jason's entire body tensed at the veiled threat. Sasha simply walked out, escorted by security. But in her mind, a new plan had already formed. If she couldn't have Jason, then she would make sure Clara suffered. And now that she knew Clara was pregnant, she knew exactly where to strike. Sasha sat in front of a full-length mirror, admiring herself as she strapped on the fake pregnancy belly, smoothing it out under her expensive designer dress. She ran her hands over it, smirking. It looked real enough. No one would question it. She had already leaked rumors to the right people, telling them she was pregnant for her new lover, a wealthy businessman from another city. But that wasn't the real goal. This wasn't about making Jason jealous anymore. This was about making Clara's life hell. And she knew exactly how to do it. For weeks, Sasha kept track of Clara's doctor's appointments, secretly gathering information. She bribed her longtime ally, Dr. Miller, a corrupt doctor who had been doing shady dealings for years. Dr. Miller had no problem falsifying records or slipping Sasha information about Clara's pregnancy. "I need to know everything," Sasha told him, sliding an envelope full of cash across his desk. Dr. Miller smirked, tucking the money away. "I've got you, Miss Monroe. I'll make sure you stay well informed." With every new piece of information she got, Sasha started spreading rumors in Jason's social circles. She dropped hints at business events, whispering in the ears of wealthy associates. "I heard Clara's pregnancy isn't going so well. Poor thing, I hope she makes it to full term. You know, first pregnancies can be risky." The whispers spread like wildfire, reaching Jason's ears faster than he expected. Even worse, somehow, Clara's name was linked to Dr. Miller's shady medical history, making people question whether she was getting the best care. Clara noticed the strange looks people started giving her whenever she stepped into the hospital. Jason, always overprotective, started getting suspicious, especially when one of his business partners pulled him aside and asked, "Are you sure Clara is in good hands? I heard Dr. Miller has a reputation." Jason's brows furrowed. How was it that everyone seemed to know more about Clara's doctor than he did? Something wasn't right, and he was going to find out what was really going on. Sasha sat in her penthouse, sipping wine, her fake baby bump in place, and her phone in hand. She scrolled through the latest gossip blogs, satisfied to see Clara's pregnancy being questioned. But she wasn't done yet. As the months passed, Clara took a step back from the cafe, allowing Mark to handle the day-to-day operations, while she oversaw things from a distance. Her pregnancy was progressing, and Jason refused to let her overwork herself. Meanwhile, Jason's instincts kept nagging at him. Something wasn't right with Dr. Miller. Too many people had mentioned his name, and it wasn't just idle gossip. Jason wasn't a man who took chances with the safety of his family. So, he quietly launched an investigation. He hired private investigators, instructing them to dig deep into Dr. Miller's history. What they found was damning. Multiple reports of bribery. Dr. Miller had taken large sums of money in exchange for falsifying medical records. Mysterious patient deaths. Several women under his care had suffered complications, and some had even lost their babies under suspicious circumstances. Connections to Sasha Monroe. He had been on her payroll for years, covering up her scandals and lies. Jason's blood boiled as he read the reports. This man was playing with people's lives. And worse, he was playing with Clara's. Jason knew one thing for sure. Dr. Miller would not lay a hand on his wife again. While Jason was uncovering the truth, Sasha was growing bolder. She had perfected her act, wearing the fake pregnancy belly everywhere, making sure the world saw her as a glowing, expectant mother. She walked into high-end boutiques, rubbing her fake belly, pretending to shop for her baby. She crashed social events, dropping hints about Jason, telling people Clara wasn't as secure in her marriage as she pretended to be. And she continued her secret checkups with Dr. Miller, using his access to Clara's medical records to stay one step ahead. But she had no idea Jason was already onto her. Jason didn't confront Dr. Miller immediately. He was a businessman first, and he knew how to take down an enemy the right way. Instead, he set a trap. He arranged for one last visit with Dr. Miller, pretending to be concerned about Clara's health. When he entered the doctor's office, he kept his expression calm, but inside, he was a storm brewing. Dr. Miller greeted him with his usual fake warmth, but Jason noticed the slight nervousness in his eyes. "Mr. Blackwell, what can I do for you?" Dr. Miller asked, smiling. Jason leaned forward, resting his hands on the desk. "I want the best for my wife," he said smoothly. "So I did a little research on you, Doctor." Dr. Miller's smile faltered. "Oh?" Jason slid a thick folder across the desk. "And what I found, well, let's just say it's enough to ruin you." Dr. Miller's face went pale as he flipped through the documents, his hands beginning to tremble. "Mr. Blackwell, Jason cut him off, his voice deadly calm. "I don't need excuses, I need the truth." Dr. Miller swallowed hard. "What do you want to know?" Jason's eyes darkened. "Start with Sasha Monroe. Tell me everything." And just like that, the entire truth began to unfold. Sasha sat in her penthouse, swirling a glass of red wine, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the glass. Then her phone buzzed. She picked it up, and the caller's voice was frantic. "Sasha, it's over. Jason knows everything. He confronted me. I had no choice but to tell him the truth." It was Dr. Miller. Sasha's grip tightened on the phone, her jaw clenching. "You idiot," she hissed, standing up. "You were supposed to handle this." "It's too late." Miller's voice trembled. "He's going to ruin me, Sasha. You need to get out before he comes for you next." Sasha hung up without another word, her mind racing. She had known Jason was smart, but she had underestimated how quickly he would act. And now, time was running out. Clara's due date was days away. If she wanted to destroy her once and for all, she needed to change her plan, and fast. Sasha pulled out her second phone, the one she used for off-the-record business. She dialed a number. The person on the other end picked up. "It's time," Sasha said, her voice cold. "I need Clara out of the picture. Permanently." There was a brief silence. "You sure about this?" the voice asked. "This isn't just rumors and mind games anymore. This is serious." Sasha's eyes darkened. "I don't care," she snapped. "Make it happen before she gives birth. I don't care how you do it. Just get it done." She ended the call and exhaled slowly, regaining her composure. If Jason wanted to ruin her, then she was going to take everything from him first. Meanwhile, Jason was already making his move. After getting every piece of evidence against Dr. Miller, he handed it over to his private legal team and the authorities. Miller's license would be revoked, and he would soon be behind bars. But Jason knew Sasha wouldn't go down so easily. She was dangerous, manipulative, and unpredictable. And Clara was vulnerable. His worst fear was that Sasha wouldn't just walk away. So he tightened security around Clara. She was days away from giving birth, and he wasn't about to take any chances. The day started like any other, calm and routine, until Clara felt the first wave of contractions. She had been resting at home, waiting for Jason to return when a sharp pain shot through her abdomen. She gasped, clutching her belly. Something's happening. It's time. She reached for her phone, her hands trembling, and called out for the maid. I need to get to the hospital, she said weakly, her breathing ragged. She barely managed to dial Jason's number. Hey, honey, Jason answered. But before he could say more, Clara let out a painful cry. Jason, I'm in labor. Jason bolted up from his chair, panic surging through his veins. I'm on my way, baby. Stay calm. 2 security guards assigned to her immediately rushed in, helping Clara to the black SUV. The driver sped off toward the hospital, sirens blaring, cutting through traffic. But halfway there, a black van came barreling out of nowhere, slamming into them at full speed. Before the guards could react, several armed men in masks jumped out, firing warning shots into the air. Get out, now! The guards instinctively reached for their weapons, but before they could draw them, the kidnappers knocked them unconscious with swift, precise blows. Clara, gasping through her contractions, was helpless. They dragged her out, shoving her into the van. Her vision blurred as fear and labor pains overwhelmed her. The van doors slammed shut, and as they sped away, the last thing Clara saw was the overturned security vehicle in the distance. She knew one thing for sure. This was Sasha's doing. At the hospital, Sasha was already in place, dressed as a midwife in crisp white scrubs. She had bribed the right people, made sure the hospital staff never questioned her identity. When the kidnappers arrived, rushing Clara inside, she was waiting. Get her into the delivery room now, Sasha ordered, her voice cool and professional. Clara was barely conscious, sweating, weak, and in excruciating pain. The real hospital staff had no idea who she truly was, because Sasha had given them a different name. Her name. As the labor progressed, Clara fought to stay awake, but her body was giving out. Then, after what felt like an eternity, a tiny, piercing cry filled the room. Her baby was born. Through her blurry vision, Clara saw the nurse hold up a tiny, fragile life, wrapped in a soft white blanket. Her heart swelled with relief and love, but it was short-lived. Because the moment she tried to reach for her child, her body gave up. Her vision went dark. She collapsed. And when she woke up hours later, her baby was gone. When Jason stormed into the hospital, his heart pounded in his chest. He had raced through the streets, nearly crashing his car to get there. The moment he burst through the doors, he grabbed the nearest nurse. Where's my wife? Her name is Clara, he demanded. The nurse looked confused. Sir, we don't have a patient by that name. Jason's blood ran cold. What do you mean you don't have her? The nurse flipped through the records. There was a woman who gave birth earlier, but her name was Sasha Monroe. Jason's world tilted. No, that's not possible. His wife had been here. She had given birth in this hospital. And Sasha was here too. Then it clicked. Sasha had stolen his wife's identity, and she had stolen their child. Jason's breath left him. A rage unlike anything he had ever known boiled inside of him. He turned to the nurse, his eyes burning with fury. Where's the baby? The nurse hesitated. The mother, Sasha Monroe, was discharged earlier. She took the baby with her. Jason felt like he had been punched in the gut. His son or daughter was out there, with a woman who would stop at nothing to destroy them. He grabbed his phone and dialed Mark. Mark, listen to me. Clara's baby has been taken. I need every resource, every contact. Find Sasha Monroe before I do, because if I get to her first, she won't live to regret it. Jason had been patient before, but now? He was a father. Jason stormed out of the hospital, rage burning in his veins. His security team was already mobilizing, and he knew time was against him. Mark's voice came through the phone, urgency in every word. Jason, I've got my people tracking every hospital surveillance camera. We'll find her. Jason's grip tightened on the steering wheel as he sped through the streets. Find her faster, he growled, because if I find her first, I'm not leaving without my child. Mark hesitated. Jason, don't do something reckless. Jason let out a bitter laugh. That woman stole my child, Mark. Reckless is an understatement for what I'm about to do. Meanwhile, Clara's eyes fluttered open in the dimly lit hospital room. Her body was weak, her throat dry, her mind foggy. Then it hit her. The baby. She sat up abruptly, her vision swaying as she looked around. Her arms were empty, panic seized her chest. Her baby was gone. The last thing she remembered was giving birth, reaching for the baby, then darkness. Her pulse raced as she tried to get out of bed, but her legs wobbled beneath her. Just then a nurse entered, startled to see her awake. "Mrs. Blackwell, you need to rest." "Where's my baby?" Clara screamed, gripping the nurse's arm. "Where's my child?" The nurse stammered, looking nervous. You were discharged earlier?" Clara's heart stopped. No, I wasn't. Who told you that?" The nurse paled. "Sasha Monroe." The room spun around Clara. Sasha had stolen her identity. Sasha had stolen her baby. A raw, piercing scream ripped from her throat. At that moment, Sasha cradled the newborn in the back seat of a private jet, a sick, satisfied smile on her lips. The baby whimpered, tiny fists curling. Sasha stroked the baby's cheek. "Hush, little one, you're mine now." She had paid handsomely to have the documents falsified. Birth certificates, travel documents. Jason and Clara would never see this child again. Or so she thought. Because just as the jet was preparing for takeoff, an alarm blared through the airstrip. She whipped her head toward the window, her heart stopping. A convoy of black SUVs stormed onto the runway, and at the front of it all, Jason. Jason jumped out of the SUV before it even stopped, his gun drawn, rage burning in his eyes. Sasha's guards rushed forward, but Jason's men took them down with military precision. Within seconds, Jason was at the jet's door, ripping it open. Sasha let out a shaky laugh, holding the baby closer. "Jason, you're too late." Smack! Jason's palm connected with Sasha's face, sending her sprawling onto the floor. The baby wailed. Jason immediately scooped the child into his arms, his heart pounding at the tiny weight. The baby instantly calmed, curling against his chest. His child. His. He turned to Sasha, who was clutching her cheek, stunned. "You stole my child." His voice was lethal, ice cold. "You will never see daylight again." Sasha shook her head, laughing weakly. "You can't prove anything, Jason. The baby's papers say I'm the mother." Jason stepped closer, his lips curling into a deadly smirk. "Funny thing about faking documents, Sasha." He tossed a stack of papers onto her lap. "The FBI doesn't take too kindly to it." Sasha's smirk disappeared. Jason's investigation had already exposed Dr. Miller, and Sasha's entire paper trail had been uncovered. A siren wailed in the distance. Jason leaned down, his eyes dark and victorious. "Say goodbye to your freedom, Sasha." And just like that, the police stormed in. Sasha Monroe's reign of terror was over. Reuniting with Clara hours later, Jason rushed into the hospital, his baby safe in his arms. Clara was sitting up in bed, eyes puffy from crying. The moment she saw Jason standing in the doorway, holding their child, a broken sob left her lips. "Jason?" Jason crossed the room in seconds, carefully placing the baby in her arms. Clara let out a choked cry, holding her child to her chest. "My baby, my sweet baby." Jason cupped her face, kissing her tears away. "No one will ever take our child from us again," he vowed. "I swear it, Clara." She looked up at him, love and gratitude shining through her tears. "We're a family," she whispered. Jason kissed her forehead, his voice strong, unshakable. "Always." And as they held their baby together, they knew nothing. No past, no enemy, no force could ever break their family again. The nightmare was over. The end.